Greetings, fellow Gorehounds, and welcome back to a Blood Splattered vlog. I'm the Horror Guru.
And I'm Count Jackula.
And today we're going to talk about Godzilla Minus One, the latest Toho Godzilla film by director Takashi Yamazaki, who I mainly know as the director of the 2010 Battleship Yamato live-action film, but apparently he's a very prolific filmmaker in Japan and has adapted like a bunch of anime and manga into films.
I'll tell you one thing wrong with this fucking movie. One thing wrong.
Yeah?
It's called Godzilla Minus One. There is definitely at least one Godzilla in this movie.
Fair enough. It's called Godzilla Minus One because after World War II, because this is a period piece set right after World War II, Japan was set to zero. Economically, they're devastated. Their population's down. Everything is shit. They're at zero. But then Godzilla shows up, and now they're at minus one. So that's why the movie is called Godzilla Minus One, but that is kind of the cheesiest aspect of this movie because the thing that actually sets this movie apart from a lot of Godzilla movies is that this movie takes itself deadly seriously. This movie is about war, the effects of war, PTSD, survivor's guilt, the shame of war.
Yes.
Yet despite that, it's also somewhat of an uplifting movie about a community coming together and picking up the pieces their government left behind after a devastating war.
Yeah.
Much more back to basics. We are back to post-World War II. Godzilla is once again created by a nuclear bomb testing, though this one actually takes a lot from the Heisei era where Godzilla was like a dinosaur.
Yeah, like a dinosaur that was on this island in the 40s and
happened to survive the Ice Age or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that dinosaur is irradiated, turns into Godzilla, starts rampaging. But that's not the heart of this movie. The heart of this movie is about Koichi, who is a former kamikaze pilot. Now, mind you, there's no such thing as a former kamikaze pilot because if you're a kamikaze pilot, you committed kamikaze. You committed suicide in the name of your government and in the name of your country. He didn't do that.
Yeah, he's a deserter.
He's a deserter, technically, yes. And so he is racked with survivor's guilt of having survived the war while all of his brothers didn't.
Yeah.
But he's also racked with the shame from the rest of society around him. If only you had sacrificed yourself, maybe we would have won. We as the audience know that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, except when he first meets Godzilla.
Except no, we know that's not true either. The movie opens up with Godzilla attacking this airbase. He has just arrived at this airbase to decommission his plane, and everyone realizes that he's a deserter and he gets mocked for this or whatever, but then Godzilla attacks before he becomes the giant size form.
Yeah, he's just really big.
He's just a big dinosaur at this point. And so it's kind of like a Jurassic Park, like T-Rex sequence.
He's like a really big T-Rex as opposed to the closer to the middle of the movie where he's like literally taller than Tokyo Tower and shit.
And there's a point where they want him to get inside the plane and to shoot Godzilla with the idea that this would stop him.
Yeah.
This would save them.
This might kill it.
Except as we learn later in the movie, bullets don't do shit to it.
Yeah. But he still doesn't know.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know if it would have stopped it.
That's why he's like fucking racked with it. But this is what I mean where the audience knows, but he doesn't. And the movie is about him going on the journey to kind of figure this stuff out for himself, but he has to like go through it first.
Yeah.
And on top of all this, he's also going through grief because he comes back home and the bombing raids from the Americans killed his whole family. So he's pretty much an orphan with no family. He kind of creates this found family with fellow orphans from around the neighborhood that he kind of picks up. One of which being this girl, Noriko, who he just randomly runs into one day because she's running from they're not cops, but they're soldiers.
Yeah, that's soldiers, guards, something
The
like
idea
that.
is that she probably stole some food or something, and so they're like trying to take her down.
But you're like, you can't get morally mad at someone stealing food under these circumstances.
And she like hands him this baby. Now he finds out later on that she's been taking care of this baby. No, it is not hers. So the baby itself is an orphan. She no longer has a family. So the three of them kind of form this kind of like makeshift nuclear family.
Yeah.
But there's also like their neighbor who is this really angry grandma who's mad that her whole family has been destroyed and really blames the main character because he's right there so she can blame him.
Yeah.
But realizes that they have this kid, so she starts coming over and basically being grandma for this little girl.
Yeah.
The four of them kind of form this family, but then Godzilla reemerges and he's much larger and he's attacking fishing boats, and the US has left the region because they can't handle Godzilla. So now it's up to him and a bunch of his friends from his village to figure out out a way to stop Godzilla, and that's the movie. This movie very much has two very pointed political messages beyond the more human story happening here.
Yeah.
One of them is fuck the US government. Not necessarily for the war. They blame their own government for the war, but for the aftermath of the war.
Yeah.
Like the bombs and shit like that. And also fuck the Japanese government for dragging us into this war in the first place, and then telling us that we have to serve, and then making us kill ourselves to do it.
Yeah.
Because this movie very much has a message that, like, to quote Doctor Who, this time everyone lives.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to sacrifice anyone. No man left behind.
That's what they're trying to achieve.
That's what they're trying to achieve.
By fending off Godzilla.
Now, granted, it's a Godzilla movie, so not everyone does survive, but it's not like you're specifically supposed to throw your life away this time. You know? If you can live, choose to live and fight another day.
Yeah, because it's motherfucking Godzilla. One of the things I really liked about them, stylistically, that I liked about the movie is when it's not Godzilla, when we're not dealing with Godzilla, particularly when we're dealing with like the town or them in the house and things like that. They're all shot like the Japanese films of the time, particularly like the Kurosawa flicks.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, like the anti-war like Kurosawa flicks that he did.
The Godzilla scenes are like Spielberg scenes.
Yes.
But the scenes at home feels more like Kurosawa films and things like that. That's kind of like the two sides of this movie. This movie was filmed on a very low budget compared to American films, so it had to like save its Godzilla moments for like the optimal moments in the film.
Yeah.
Most of the movie takes place in tiny, small rooms with characters acting their asses off to each other, which is really well done.
Yeah.
Like the performances are great. You're gonna care about these characters more than you normally care about any character in a Godzilla film that isn't Godzilla.
Yeah.
You are gonna fucking tear up. You're gonna cry. I fucking cried at least 3 times in this movie. It fucking got me.
Yeah. One of the things that I found is very interesting is that up until Godzilla's initial attack on a city, this totally could have been like the original Gojira from a completely different angle.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
but after that initial attack is when it diverges.
Oh yeah, I get what you mean because there's a lot different here.
Yeah, because that's the point where it really starts to get different because there's no oxygen destroyer.
Yeah.
There's no Shirazawa.
Yeah,
you know, it's all about these guys.
Yep. There is a Serizawa stand-in in this movie.
Yes.
A scientist character who helps come up with an idea to try to tackle Godzilla, but he's not exactly in the same Serizawa role. He's just mainly like the guy who comes up with a plan.
Yeah, he's just a scientist.
But what I like about it is that he's like not military, not currently a practicing scientist. He's a scientist who basically retired and became like one of these volunteers to help remove the mines from the sea.
He essentially became a cleanup crew.
Well, yeah, because the idea is none of these people are officials anymore.
Correct.
Because it's supposed to be a coalition of the community.
Yep.
Because it's not anti-Japan, it's anti-Japanese government, pro-Japanese people.
Very anti-war.
Yes. Yes. War is 100% the enemy of this story besides Godzilla.
Yeah.
Very well thought out and plotted movie. It also looks really good. Despite being low budget and despite Godzilla basically being a CGI creature in this movie, it looks really great. Every time Godzilla's in the water, especially, looks fantastic. This is a great scene that's very Jaws-like. Once again, the Godzilla scenes are kind of like Spielberg movies.
Yeah.
Where that's very Jaws, where it's like this fishing boat being chased by Godzilla and he's like tailing behind them like a fucking alligator.
Yeah, like his whole mouth is bigger than the boat.
That's the scene where Godzilla looks the best. Weirdly enough, Godzilla looked the worst to me CGI-wise when he was walking on land.
Yes. The fidelity of the Godzilla effects kind of hovers between Jurassic Park and Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah, it's still impressive for the budget because this movie looks better than movies twice its budget a lot of the time. But there's still moments where when he's walking on land, they're simultaneously trying to recreate the feeling of the rubber suit.
Yes.
But then they'll have him do like these sudden, almost cat-like movements. And I don't know if the connection between those two moving styles works that well, but the movie overall worked.
Yeah. The effects are usually the jankiest part of the movie.
Yeah.
You know?
That being said, as per usual with the Godzilla movie, all the practical sets and like miniatures and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, that stuff's great.
Works fucking great in this movie. There's one scene that really impressed me for the budget where they have people standing on a building while it's collapsing. And you're kind of watching as the whole thing collapses from the point of view of being on top of it. Now, not every Godzilla movie qualifies for this, but this is 100% one of the Godzilla movies that I would say is a horror movie.
Oh yeah.
It's not just a war movie. It's not just an action movie. movie, it's also a horror movie because the way it treats Godzilla is scary.
Yeah, he's a fucking monster. Like, it's a lot closer to the things that they did in the original and in the 2014 Legendary film.
Absolutely. I'm just amazed at what this movie accomplishes, given how little it had to work with. There are times where I could tell they're trying to, like, cut some corners for budgetary reasons, but it all works. It's amazing how many scenes in this movie are literally just people in a very small room talking back and forth to one another, and yet it's more engaging than 90% of action movies.
Oh, God, yeah.
Like, because the emotional resonance is there, the character work that is there, the theming is there.
Yes. Knowing what you're doing and having a small budget and making the most of that is what allowed this movie to be the financial success that it is.
I would 100% agree. I've seen some people argue that this movie doesn't really have the Nagasaki/Hiroshima theming that the original Godzilla had. I disagree.
I would disagree with that as well.
I would disagree. I feel like that's still here in the movie. First off, Godzilla is still partially created by the nuclear bomb testing in the islands that America did. So that's still there. But more importantly, the imagery in this movie is evoking the destruction of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. In particular, there's a point in which Godzilla uses his atomic breath on a city. And in this movie, his atomic breath isn't just a beam, it's a beam that turns into a nuclear explosion.
Yeah, he creates like mushroom clouds.
Unlike a lot of Godzilla movies where you mainly see Godzilla rampage throughout the city and then we cut to like some military men inside of like a building talking about the aftermath. We're actually on the ground looking at the aftermath and it looks like ground zero of the nuclear explosion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like that was so done on purpose.
So Godzilla still in this movie is still a metaphor for the atomic bomb. It's just not ever stated in dialogue. It's shown visually. The
movie actually also adds like a detail that we've never seen before, which is why doesn't Godzilla use his atomic breath all the time?
Oh, that's right, yeah. Because in this one, he actually hurts himself when he uses it.
Yeah, he actually burns himself when he uses it.
Which is really cool, because you can tell that the idea is that he couldn't do that in his dinosaur form.
Right.
But now that he's irradiated, he has this ability.
Yeah. Oh, also, Godzilla regenerates in this one.
Which is something I think it took from Shin Godzilla.
Yes, I would agree with that.
That's the other one that had the regenerating fucking Godzilla. But unlike Shin Godzilla, he doesn't, like, form new weapons to deal with the situation. He just regenerates into, like, the way he normally looks.
Yeah.
Whereas Shin Godzilla, if you blew off a limb, it would reform like Tokyo Gore Police style into something to counter what just happened.
Exactly. Now he's got a machine gun for an arm.
Exactly. Which is how he ends up like shooting that like laser light show out of his spine later on in the movie.
Yeah.
I love this movie. I think this is one of the best Godzilla movies ever made. Probably top 5, maybe top 3. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Godzilla movies I love.
Well, yeah, like I would actually have to like count, but if it's not in the top 5, it's only because there are 5 others.
Absolutely. And what's amazing about it is that it's very rare for me, with the exception of the original Godzilla, to go with the Godzilla solo movies where it's just Godzilla.
Yeah. Usually,
I love the original one, but usually I like to see Godzilla fight something. In this movie, that wasn't a problem.
No.
There was no other monster for Godzilla to fight, but I didn't care because the rest of the movie was so goddamn engaging.
Yeah. Also, they go full bore with Godzilla destroying that city, too.
Yes.
Damn.
God, that scene's one of the most emotional scenes in the entire movie. Though I do have a criticism of that scene, but I have to wait for the spoilers.
Yeah.
I have to wait for the spoilers because it's a big spoiler moment.
Yes. Yeah. I think I know which one you're talking about.
It's a great example of them doing something that makes emotional sense for that beat in the movie, but maybe not so much logical sense, but...
Yeah. There's some storytelling logic shit going on here, kid.
But I will give a movie, if it actually gets me emotionally with something that still doesn't quite make a lot of sense, I will give it that emotional win, because, hey, you got me.
As long as you don't do, like, the end of Spielberg's, like, War of the Worlds.
Okay, well, see, the problem is that one undercut the emotions.
Yeah, it undercut it.
That was different.
This one didn't undercut it.
There is a moment that is kind of like War of the Worlds in this, but I actually think it works in this movie, but we'll talk more about that in the spoiler section. So yeah, Godzilla Minus One, it's currently in theaters. It was originally going to leave theaters like a couple days ago, but they just renewed it for another couple weeks. So go out and see it before it leaves theaters. It is a phenomenal movie, one of the best Godzilla movies, definitely one of the best movies of the year. You're going to enjoy it. Check it out.
Yeah.
And with that said, let us move on to the spoilers.
Okay, so unlike a lot of Godzilla movies, movies, there are big questions and big worries you will have as an audience as to who lives and who dies.
Okay, I was really worried for a huge chunk of this movie, and it's for a couple of reasons. Number one, I saw a lot of chuds praising the hell out of this movie. So when the movie started doing he's a former kamikaze pilot, everyone's shaming him for not killing himself for his country, I was really worried the movie was going to do the nationalistic thing.
Yeah, it was just going to be pure jingoism.
Where by the end of the movie, he's killed himself for his country, and hooray, because he finally fulfilled his destiny as a useless soldier in the fucking war machine.
I probably would not have liked this movie if it had done.
And I was worried it was gonna happen.
Well, yeah, because they fucking lean into that until the last possible minute.
But the thing that kept giving me hope throughout the movie is the movie, much like a Spielberg movie, would have certain characters that were very much the voice of the director. I was just worried that they were going to turn out to not be.
Yeah.
One of them is Noriko, which is the girl that he takes in and kind of becomes his de facto wife, but with them never actually tying the knot. She is one of the first ones in the movie who keeps telling him, no, you lived. That means something.
Yeah.
And we got to make the best out of this. We got to survive. This is about surviving. When she first started saying that, I'm like, okay, hopefully that's the voice of the author, and they're not going to have him go the other direction, and they're not going to have the voice of the author be the societal pressure around him. But then, by the end of the movie, the rest of the societal pressure flips. Because a couple years go by, he befriends these people, they form a bond, kind of their new band of brothers, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the movie, all his friends are basically like, don't kill yourself. No, this time everyone lives. There's this great scene in which the scientist basically looks straight into the camera and delivers the message of the movie.
Yeah.
And that's that we must come together as a people to fix these problems. We cannot rely on the government, and we cannot sacrifice people along the way to get there. You know, basically he gives the this time everyone lives speech.
Yeah, he does. He does.
You know?
A little bit closer to the end, they also do the, they basically are like, no, you haven't been to war.
Yeah.
That makes you a better person.
Yeah, I love that scene where it's just like, not going to war is a thing to, is a thing to value.
It's a thing to be proud of.
Yeah, exactly. So as the movie went on, I started becoming less and less concerned about that, especially once I figured out that, oh, I get it. The fucking mechanic's gonna put a fucking ejector seat in the goddamn plane. So it's gonna look like he's gonna kill himself.
You figured that out way before I did.
Yeah, he looked at me and I was like pointing at the screen when the mechanic was telling him everything in the ship. But then there's a point in which audio cuts out and it kind of pulls back and he's telling something to the guy, but it's not telling the audience.
Right.
I'm like, okay, they're gonna save it as a surprise. So at the end of the movie, when he fucking flies the plane into Godzilla's mouth and explodes Godzilla's whole head, which is another thing about this movie, while Godzilla can regenerate in this movie, he's a lot more fragile than he has been in previous Godzilla
he's not
movies.
just completely invulnerable.
But because he can regenerate, it kind of makes up for that. It's like he's like got Wolverine powers. But he does this while Godzilla's like about to do his atomic ray, so it kind of nuclear explodes him from the inside.
Yeah.
It's a very great heroic moment. Oh shit, I see him! And like his parachute's coming down, and I'm like, yeah, I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew that mechanic that was mad at him for like not sacrificing himself when everyone was dying to Godzilla on the fucking base was eventually gonna come around and be like, no, you need to live.
Well, yeah. Right before that happened, I was like, oh shit, that's right. They keep talking about how the planes had no ejector seats.
Yeah.
Oh, so he put an ejector seat in the motherfucker.
Mm-hmm. You must live. You must be a father to this little girl.
Yeah. You have to be a father to this kid, you know.
Now, this is especially because at this point in the movie, Noriko has died in one of Godzilla's attacks.
Yeah.
As far as the audience is aware, anyway. We'll get to that in a second. But Noriko, there's a point in which Godzilla is attacking and he's about to blast his atomic ray, and Noriko pushes Soichi into the alleyway, and the blast happens, and she gets caught up in the blast and blown away.
Yeah.
Now, my problem with this scene is that while I understand the scene was urgent, I understand she was moving very fast, every part of my brain was going like, you could have just like thrown all your body weight and pulled him into the alleyway with you instead of just pushing him.
The other thing that's important to note is she's not caught in like the actual radiation blast, but because Godzilla makes these explosions, there's a shockwave.
There's a shockwave. There's still some radiation in that, I believe, but because the blast happened like
miles away,
you know, but they're getting the fucking shockwave where they're at.
Yeah, and it just, oh man, it just fucking levels,
devastates it. devastates it. But I was worried when that scene happened, because now the voice of the audience that's telling him he should live just sacrificed yourself so that he could live.
Yeah. Oh, are we muddling the message?
Are we muddling the message? But then the movie pulls a Spielberg in War of the Worlds. He receives a telegram after he lands and Godzilla's kind of self-exploded and is now at the bottom of the goddamn sea in pieces. He receives a telegram informing him that Noriko is alive, and he rushes to the hospital and finds her sitting there, and they have this very emotional moment. Now, she's obviously got some sort of radiation scarring on her neck, which felt like a sequel tease to me, and I wasn't sure if that's what it was. Until it showed us Godzilla underwater reforming and then cut to credits. And I was like, okay, all right. Unlike Shin Godzilla, it sounds like they are planning on making this the new era of Godzilla Toho films.
Yes, yeah. I was actually kind of happy when the girl survived.
Me too.
You know, I was so convinced she was just fucking dead.
It was I had a weird mix of emotions when she died, because I had the initial emotional impact of the death. You know, I'm sitting there with Soichi crying as the fucking black tar rains down on his face.
Yeah.
But then after that scene happened and I'm thinking about the scene, I'm going like, yeah, but doesn't that undercut her whole point about living, sacrificing herself? Isn't that like kind of hypocritical? Like, don't sacrifice yourself, you must live. So having her live at the end kind of completes that circle for me thematically.
Yeah, it also worked because like of the way they revealed her death, which is there's no body. Like dude's like the only survivor.
Yep.
But he's like woken up hours later and everyone's just gone.
Yeah.
Everyone's just gone. And so you find yourself going, oh, the rescue crew just didn't see him.
Yep.
You know, oh, okay, all right. Okay, yeah, all right, I'll work. I'll buy it.
One of the undersung things that I really appreciate about this movie is that while at the very beginning, everyone and their goddamn mother is pointing at Soichi and going, you must feel shame. Shamed your country. You have shamed your family. You have shamed everyone.
The Americans dropped the nuclear bomb because of you personally.
And what I love is that at the end of the movie, none of them are saying that anymore.
Nope.
Not because he saved the day. They were not saying it before he even did that. It took him having to actually take out Godzilla to reach that point where it's just like, oh, I can finally hear them now. Because not only did I take out Godzilla, I chose to live at the end. It's a classic hero's journey ending.
Yeah.
He is now the master of both worlds. There is the world of the kamikaze pilot where you're going to kill yourself. And then there's the world of being a family man at home who cares about his daughter and cares about his wife. And by the end of this movie, he finds the equilibrium with that. And that's that, well, maybe I can fight and save my country without killing myself.
Yeah, that's why the fucking mechanic is the wizard.
Yeah, he's the magician. Oh, I love that entire sequence in this movie, that entire montage where he's trying to get a hold of the old mechanic that's pissed off at him.
Yeah.
And he's like, it must be this guy. It can't be anyone else. Why? Because this is the guy I've wronged. You know?
Yeah.
This is the guy who I let Godzilla attack and I didn't even try to fucking stop him because I was too scared.
Yeah, and he's just too badass enough to live because everyone else is dead.
Yep. This is just a phenomenal movie. Phenomenal human characters, great effects, even if I think Godzilla looks a little goofy sometimes on the land, but you know, I'm okay with a little goofy in my Godzilla movies.
It's a Godzilla movie.
Exactly.
There's a certain amount of janky that one just has to learn to enjoy if you're going to watch a Godzilla movie. And if it's not there, hey, awesome. But if it is, and that ruins the movie for you, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're watching a Godzilla movie.
It's not like it would be any less goofy if he was in a suit running around like in those scenes, you know? Like,
yeah,
exactly.
It would be like, oh man, look at how fucking stupid those Muppet puppets look. You're watching a Muppet movie, bitch.
The only thing I can even say is that it doesn't look as good as the legendary Godzilla movies, but those movies are operating on $100 million, $200 million budgets.
Yeah. They got way more money. More importantly, way more manpower.
Yeah, this is working on a budget more similar to something like Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah.
And trying to make a movie on the scale of like a legendary Godzilla movie. And on that level,
it succeeds at that level. But it doesn't have the fidelity because that's too much to expect from this team.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's way too much to expect. It's more amazing what they do accomplish.
I think we've said all we really need to say at this point.
So, yeah.
So where can they find you, Count Jackula?
Oh, you can find me here on YouTube at The Count Jackula Show. Just look in that search bar, and I stream throughout the week, usually around between 6 and 9 Pacific Standard Time. Okay. What about you?
Y'all know me, I'm the Horror Guru. You can find me at the Horror Guru on Twitter, on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, Mastodon. Just look up the Horror Guru or Blood Splattered Cinema and I'll be there. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And if you'd like to help out either of us more directly, be sure to check out our Patreon pages. And remember, if you decide to go the Patreon route, even $1 a month can go a long way, but we will certainly accept more. And if you made it this far into the video, then I want you to comment below, and be sure to comment below using the hashtag GODZILLA+1. That way, I know. That way, Jack knows. That way, the whole world knows that you are taking a date to go see Godzilla -1.